author and social critic James Baldwin told this story. He said that his father had said this one phrase to him again and again in his life. And it's, every room you walk into is better because you're there. And when I heard that, that just blew me away. And so I started thinking about that phrase. And it became a mantra in my mind. Make every room you walk into better because you're there. Well, I walked into this room today to talk to you about custom web design. And that's something that my studio in Portland, Oregon has been doing for about 15 years. We work a lot in coffee, specialty food and drink, hospitality. We're a pretty small studio, so sometimes we're the designer on a project, sometimes we're the developer, sometimes we run the whole project. And working in coffee in particular has given us some insights into how to create customized websites. Coffee brands have these universal issues. So yes, I have a podcast, I have a show. I talk to coffee roasters quite often, and recently I talked to AKA Coffee Roasters creative director, and he was kind of explaining the issues that coffee roasters have with design. And he said that roasted coffee at a certain point has reached this parity where we're getting coffee from the same importers, so a lot of us are roasting very similarly. So it really comes down to which lifestyle brand you want to purchase or which local brand you want to represent. How do people make those choices? Well, a lot of it comes down to design, how you show yourself to potential customers. And so, design becomes hugely important for coffee roasters, and that means that we really work to differentiate them when we're building their websites. And we can apply some of what we've learned in working with coffee roasters to all kinds of industries. So we've worked with a bunch of different e-commerce platforms over the years. We've had a lot of headaches trying to make sites that were unique and customized and also worked really well for our clients. And eventually we found WooCommerce. And this was just an absolute breath of fresh air for us. Part of it's because WooCommerce is just a fantastic platform, and part of it is because there's just this amazing community around it, and it's a real joy to be part of. No other platform allows us to customize the way WooCommerce does. And that's everything from the front end to processing transactions to transactional email. And all of this is so important when you're creating a custom design. So we've got our platform in place. Our studio started to look around and think about how is it that we make custom websites? What's our process? How can we do this better? So today I'm going to talk to you about 3 places that we've been exploring, and I'll also be showing you some examples of projects that we've done, as you've been seeing here. So first, why? Why do we customize websites at all? Why do we put in the time or the effort? And then, what does our process look like? How do we come up with the kind of unique ideas that these sorts of sites need? And then, what is the role of the individual and teams on these projects? So first is, I hope you'll take some of these insights and bring them back to your own projects and make every project that you join better because you're there. So why? Why do we customize websites? It takes time, it takes effort. That means it also takes money. So why are we doing it? Well, the simple answer is a client's hired us to do it, right? They want to sell, they hire us to make a custom website, and so we're on the project. But we're not making custom websites just to make something pretty, just to put something in our portfolio. We're making custom websites to tell unique stories that have a pull. Unique stories that help people sell their products better, sell their services better, help them drum up donations. And as we're doing this, it helps to know a little bit about why people choose to spend their money. Why are they choosing to buy one product over another? Why do they go to one coffee roaster over another? When I first started working on e-commerce sites, it was really easy for me to think that what I was doing was basically selling a product. I'm trying to show someone a bag of coffee, and then I'm going to make it really easy to buy that bag of coffee. And so I'm thinking about where to put the buy button, where to put the shop link. And absolutely, of course, people need to be able to buy on the websites that we're making. I'm not suggesting that that's not important. We want to get products into the hands of customers. That's why we're there. But people are nuanced. We want more than things. In fact, social research tells us that it's experiences that make us happy, not things. In the end, it's holding that hot cup of coffee and taking a sip that makes us happy, not holding that bag of coffee beans. So Dr. Thomas Gilovich out of Cornell University, he talks about this a little bit. And he says, we consume experiences directly with other people. And after those experiences are gone, they're part of the stories that we tell each other. This is why they mean so much. They become part of who we are, part of the way we talk about ourselves. And of course, these products are part of the experiences. So when we're building a website, we're not selling a bag of coffee. We're selling the idea of sipping hot coffee. We're selling this idea of this future state of happiness, and the product we're selling is part of that vision. Now, to do that, we need to start making emotional connections with the websites that we're creating. We need to start telling stories. We need to have pages on our sites that leave room for these emotional connections to grow. So rather than focusing on conversion on every page of our website, we need to make some pages that exist as part of a story about why this product should mean something to you, why you'd want to experience it. Some pages on our site need to allow potential customers to fall for our product, fall for our service, or fall for our brand. And it's these stories, along with brand voice, that's what makes customization so important, and that's what makes it so helpful for our customers, because we want to help them sell more. It's nice if our portfolio looks great too, but this is the ultimate goal. So we know why we're working on custom websites. And the truth is to make a customized website, it takes some creative problem solving. So we've started to look at our process as well. Now, I've been working on websites for about 15 years. And in my mind, the web has changed incredibly in the last 15 years. I remember making these little flash sites in these tiny boxes, and that's all we could do, and all of a sudden, the whole world feels open to us. But in a lot of ways, the traditional web design approach, it doesn't change all that much, not as much as the rest of the web has for us. It's still this linear process. We go in a straight line, we finish one phase, we go to the next one. In broad strokes, we often start with discovery. We're defining the project, maybe we do a competitive analysis. We move on to structure. We get a sitemap in place, we get wireframes. We go to design. Maybe we do mood boards to make sure we're going down the right path. And then we go through some rounds of mock-ups and approval, and then we get like this approved website design, and we hand it off to a developer. And some magic happens, and they make it exactly like we designed it. Not really. And then the website launches, and fantastic. The thing about this process is it's linear. It expects us to go from one phase to the next in a straight line. And a lot of times, we ping our billing cycle on these phases. So you get your mock-ups approved, you get a check. The website launches, you get a check. So what happens in this process if you're developing the website and you realize that some decisions that were made in the design phase, they're just not working out, or you have an idea that would save the client a lot of money, actually, because you could do it just in a slightly different way. In these distinct phases, it can be hard to go back to the designer and say, can we rethink that? And the client might be thinking, didn't I already approve this website? Didn't I already pay for that phase? You told me you could build this. Or you get all the way to testing at the end, and you realize that some of your earlier assumptions about customers and their needs, they were just plain wrong. Now, in the early days, I can't tell you how many projects we launched where right at the end when we were testing, we would learn something about customers and we would tell ourselves, man, I wish we would have known that when we were first starting on the website. I would have done X wrong or differently. And then we put it in our pocket and we think, well, we'll do that differently next time. That's a good learning experience. I don't want to do things differently next time. I want a way to fix them this time. And our traditional approach, it's just not always up to that kind of thinking, to that kind of revision. We're getting pretty frustrated at our studio, and so we started to look around. Are there other processes out there that we could bring in that would just help us? There's a process called design thinking. You may have heard of it. It's gotten written about a lot in the last couple years. And we started looking at it and thinking, can we bring some of the ideas from this process into our own studio? Could it help us out? Could it help us get unstuck? What I like about it, and this is the model that's out of Stanford's University of Design, or Stanford's University, it's not a linear process, so it has 5 phases. But these can go in a strict circle. You can go a few times around. Some of these can happen all at once. It's not really a circle. I'd like to go through these 5 phases and just talk a bit about what they do. The first part is empathy. And empathy is simply being able to see from another person's perspective. You know, a lot of times when we make websites, we come in with this idea of user needs. Probably because we all have a lot of experience making websites. We've done this before. We know what we're building. But those notions, they can sort of block us from actually hearing other people's needs. So I come from a background in cultural anthropology years ago. And we had this theory of cultural relativism. And all that is trying to see the world or culture from another person or culture's perspective. And the way we go about this is that we first recognize that we're walking in with some preconceived notions, with our own ideas. And we try to look at those ideas and then just let them go. Just know that they're ours, and we don't want to look at them right now. And when we start to see ourselves as a blank slate, and then we start to talk to other people, we can start to hear what they're saying about their needs and desires. So that's empathy. Really talking to customers, really talking to shop owners and the people on their team. When we build websites, we want to think about both of those groups and make sure that the website we're building meets both of their needs. They're going to be different. Dale Carnegie once said, to be interesting, be interested. And by interested, I mean with an open mind and willing to have new perspectives, willing to talk to people and figure out what these customers need when you're building websites for them. Now, when we work with coffee roasters, we drink their coffee. That's easy to do. I love coffee. But we also go and we talk to people in the shipping department, try to hang out at the roastery when we can, and talk to pretty much anyone that will speak to us. If you're selling a website that's selling lawnmowers, go out and mow your lawn and ask yourself, when did I feel good? When did I feel pride? When was I frustrated? You know, we can always find ways to get into other people's perspectives in really small ways in our lives. And only then, when we've started to look at other people's needs and perspectives, can we start to define the needs of the project. And this definition, it's descriptive, not prescriptive. We're not coming up with solutions yet. We're just defining problems. It's not design a chair, it's create a way to suspend a person. Because honestly, if all we're doing is designing a chair, there are other platforms out there where you can whip up a really quick website, but that's not what we're doing here. We want to create a way to suspend a person, and we want to go where that takes us. And that's what WooCommerce allows us to do. We can get awfully creative here. How many times have you been on a project where you're given a requirements document and the solutions are already in there? Make an X page that does X, and you're just making it before you've even talked to anyone. How did you know that what you were building was what people needed? Or that you were even defining the right problems? So it's once we've defined problems that we try to start coming up with solutions. And that's called ideating. And I cannot stand that word. It's like the worst word to say. It's brainstorming, it's problem solving, it's designing. It's coming up with as many solutions as you can to the problems that you've defined. Now, even if you've worked with a client before and you're redesigning their website, ideating is this really important process of brainstorming new solutions for right now for this project. How many designers does it take to screw in a light bulb? Why a light bulb? How do we know? Now, at our studio, we've started to think, how do we get unstuck? How do we come up with new ideas? We know we're supposed to do it, but what's the best way? And the one thing that we figured out right away is no good ideas come from staring at your screen, looking at other people's work, or God forbid, starting to look at work that someone else rejected on a past project, because they're kind of similar. So we started thinking about wandering, the same thing we want customers to do on our websites, getting out, taking walks, thinking. There's this Dallas proverb that is only in still water that we can see. And we take that to mean get out of the studio, grab pen and paper or your iPad Pro and pen tool, whatever it is, and sketch and think, ideate. And this is backed up by science. There's been studies that show that our best work, it doesn't happen when we're focused, it happens when our mind is at rest. And I'll put up links to all of these after this so you can see that they're like real science. It means if we're about to start designing or thinking or brainstorming, we should feel empowered to get up and walk around and think first. That's part of our day that should be built in. We also start working on lists. So we have this exercise in the studio where we make lists of 10 every day. We did this for a while. It could be 10 anything. 10 restaurant ideas, 10 places you want to go, 10 WooCommerce extensions you want to make. Pretty much anything. It just gets you used to generating ideas. It also gets you used to throwing ideas away, because when you're generating these 10 lists, you're not acting on them. You're letting them go. And it can be really easy to think of our ideas as precious and have trouble letting them go. So getting used to that is just a really good personal exercise. And why 10? Well, a lot of times we'll go into a project and we're like, we're going to show you 3 to 5 mock-ups, and then we make 3 to 5 mock-ups, and then we hand them to the client. And we know a couple of them aren't our best work, but there's 5. Coming up with 10 means we're going to throw away half of our ideas. And there's this process where iteration 1, 2, 3, 4, that's what's expected, right? That's what starts to come out. And then in 5, 6, 7, we start to dig really deep and start thinking a little bit more about it. And by 9 or 10, some of our ideas are just weird. Sometimes that's the point where we're like, they'll never let us do that, or we'll never show it to them. But we don't know at this point what the best ideas are, because the next part is prototyping. And prototyping for web design, it's easy. It's putting up a staging server right when you're making sitemaps. And it's adding a vanilla theme, putting WooCommerce in there, maybe putting the plugins that you think you might be working on, and testing out how things work before design, even. Getting an idea of the flow before you're thinking about what it's going to look like. And the really exciting thing is when you start showing these to clients, they start thinking about how the website works alongside of how it's going to look, and they become active members of the process. They can tell you really early on, that's not what I actually thought that was going to do, or that's not what our customers are going to need. And you don't find that out way at the end. You find it out really quickly. And then testing. When we were doing a more traditional web approach, tests were always at the end, and it was the last week or two, and we were asking, does this look good on an iPhone? Does this look good in this browser? But if you're prototyping all along, then you're testing all along. And that gives you really unique insights. You might start to learn a little bit more about users and change what you're building. You might get some new ideas for the project, or even redefine some of your problems, and so you get to start circling back. Now, when we started bringing design thinking into our process, at first we went really slow. So we took the first 2 phases and we said, well, that'll be our discovery phase. And then we'll kind of cycle through the rest as we go. We kept our pretty traditional milestones. It didn't look all that different to our clients. And then we started to let go of those milestones and build in true design thinking structure. And one of the things that happened right away that really helped is that we stopped invoicing by milestones and started invoicing by months. And so there was never a sense of design is over, now we're moving on to another phase. That's been incredibly helpful. I'm just going to give you a couple examples of projects where we brought in some design thinking. So a little while ago, we were working with a coffee roaster, and they brought us in to redesign their website. Sales weren't going the way they wanted them to, and they figured a front-end redesign would help that. And so we got started, but then we started talking to some people in shipping, and we realized that every night they were printing off all the orders of the day, and then they were hand tallying what coffee was sold and then roasting that coffee. And as they got a little bit bigger, that became laborious. All of these mistakes were made, so sometimes they were roasting too much coffee and there was a ton of waste, and other times they were roasting not enough. And so customers weren't getting their coffee in time. They weren't trusting the process. They weren't coming back to order. So I feel like this person got excited too soon, but we made them these reports where it would tell them what coffee to roast every night. Yay! And it was great. They started roasting the right amount of coffee. Customers were getting coffee on time consistently so they could trust the process. And that's what helped their sales. And magic. More recently, we worked with 4 Barrel coffee roasters in San Francisco. And 4 Barrel brought us in for a redesign of their website. Now, a lot of coffee roasters, they have a shop page you can buy coffee. And you go to that page, and coffee is listed by growing region. And that doesn't actually tell you a lot about the coffee you're buying. These are producers. That doesn't tell you a lot about the coffee you're buying either. In fact, when we started talking to customers, what we realized is, much like with wine, they like to talk about the flavors they like in coffee, taste descriptors. But no coffee roaster was showcasing their coffee in this way. And so when we redesigned the sites, one of the biggest changes we made was simply letting people filter by taste descriptors. Now, it seemed like such a small thing, but when 4 Barrel Coffee Roasters was named one of the 21 best coffee roasters in the world, theirs was the only website that got a mention. And it wasn't about some fancy graphic design in the front. It was bonus points for a unique online shop organized around specific flavor notes rather than country, helping drinkers dial in something that fits their personal taste. Just last year, a roaster in Norway came out with coffees named by flavor. Also has never happened before. This is a new trend happening in coffee. And just 2 weeks ago, Stumptown Coffee Roasters out of Portland, they put flavor notes prominently on the front of their bag for the first time ever. And that just goes to say that sometimes when you go through that empathy phase and you start talking to people, you're going to come up with some insights that your customer or your client might not know about, and the industry might not have even noticed yet. I mean, just talking to a few customers, we were able to give 4Barrel a 2-year competitive advantage by just telling people what the coffee was going to taste like. Now, right now, we're working with Literary Arts. They're a local Portland nonprofit. We've actually worked with them for about a decade. And we made a website for them quite a while back. And there was one requirement for the project that was considered not movable. And the requirement was, we have all of these programs, 5 programs. Everything that we do falls under one of the programs. The homepage has to have 5 links to these 5 programs, no hierarchy, no questions about it. That's me at one of their events meeting the author Salman Rushdie. If you see me in the hall, you can ask me how I made a complete fool of myself in front of him. This is not a good memory. We built that for them. We built that for Literary Arts. And if you know about their programs, you know where you want to go, you're fine. This works. But if you're new and you're going to an event and you just want to know something about the event, it's like looking at a bunch of closed doors and thinking, which one's the bathroom? You're stuck. So luckily, we're doing a redesign with them right now. And we asked if we could bring some more design thinking ideas into the process. And they were game for doing an empathy phase before writing out the formal requirements. And so we're just getting started with this. We talked to all the program heads. And we just asked them this one question. What's the one thing that would make this project successful for you? And 201, every single program head, in some way or another, just basically asked us to open those doors, to stop separating the programs so much. And that's what we're working on now. It's pretty exciting. So we know why, we know how, but really once we start changing the structure of our projects, the way we look at individuals and teams, that starts changing pretty quickly as well. Design thinking says that better work is going to happen when 5 people work on a project for 1 day than when 1 person works on a project for 5 days. And so we've started to think, how do we put teams together that work together well, come up with interesting ideas, the kinds of ideas that custom web design needs? Let's consider 2 teams. We've got Team A. Everyone is great at their job. You've got programmers and project managers and designers. When they meet, everyone talks about the piece of the project that they know a lot about. The meetings begin and end on time. Everyone gets back to work. Now, Team B, slightly different. There's some people that have worked on website projects before, maybe some haven't. Everyone's kind of talking all the time. Sometimes people bring donuts. And when the projects are over, or when the meeting is over, people stop and linger for a while. Which team is going to come up with the best ideas, the most innovative ideas? Well, I'm happy to say that research says it's actually Team B. They're not just going to be more fun, but they're going to have the structure to come up with the innovative ideas. And one of the things that makes for a good team like this is actually the team's social connectedness to each other, their ability to listen to one another and to talk freely. We've thought a lot about how to bring in that Team B approach to our projects. Whether we're the designer, the developer, whether we're running it all in-house, how can we make a Team B? The one thing I always do is when I'm putting together an agenda, I always put the first 10 minutes of the meeting as catch up. It's not catch up about the project, it's catch up with each other. Because a really good team is going to do that. They're going to want to do that. And we want to let them know that that's expected, encouraged, that that's part of being a good team. There's 3 other ground rules for great teams. First, I'm going to say that the problem with the Team A approach is that everybody's always kind of in their own space, right? And Team B people, they're all thinking and imagining. That's what makes them different. So here's the 3 things. Working together, everyone designs, all voices are heard. Pretty straightforward. When project phases start to get combined and all of a sudden you have designers and developers and everybody in a room all working together at once, right away we learn we've all got to learn to work together. Now, I don't think the traditional web design process sets us up for success there. In a lot of ways, we keep designers and developers apart so much that they even have distinct phases named after them. And oftentimes, we're in projects and we're designing, we get approval, we hand off to the developer. And we always go into these projects with the best of intentions, right? We want to make great work for our clients. But how many times have you been the developer on a project and you get handed the designs that you're about to turn into a website, and you realize that the designer has written some checks you can't cash, right? And so you start to ask questions like, is there a style guide, or is that a web font? Or did you think about mobile? And then the developer starts making the site, and designer sees it for the first time. And we've been on both sides of this. They see it for the first time, and they're like, I don't think that person actually understands my designs or design at all. And they start writing these emails, trying to be polite, design review requested, or bug checker. That doesn't feel good for anybody on a project. Recently, we were the developers on a project, and I checked in with the designer, and I said, hey, do you want to come over and see our prototype? Maybe before you start designing, and we can just kind of show you how things work. No, he said, I don't like to be encumbered by what's possible. It's a true story. In a design thinking run process, that could never happen. You're always in the room together all the time. You're throwing ideas off of each other, you're helping each other, you're building each other up, you're prototyping, and more likely people are saying, wouldn't it be cool if? Is that possible? Can we do this? And there's an energy about the process. And that becomes really obvious in the work. Also obvious, everybody at one point or another in the project designs. Steve Jobs once said, people think it's the veneer, that designers are handed this box and told, make it look good. And that's not what we think design is. It's not what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works. This is so true for websites. And if design is how it works, then there are a ton of people influencing that design. There's the project managers, there's developers, there's the client, there's the content people. There's the designers. Jared Spool once said, anyone who influences what the design becomes is the designer. That can be exciting news, it can also be stressful news, because what that means is we all get our voices heard, but that also means we all have a responsibility to speak up if something doesn't look good. It's on all of us to make the project successful. This also means that all voices need to get heard. Whether you're new to the web or whether you've made a bunch of websites, we need to create spaces where everyone in a meeting, in a project, feels like they can speak up and have their voices heard. So a story. There was a truck driving down the road. Truck driver tries to go under a low underpass, can't make it through, and they're stuck. They can't go forward, they can't go backwards. Traffic jam happens, and a bunch of people show up and they try to start helping. You've got engineers and firefighters, maybe other truck drivers, and everyone's in their own space thinking, like, how can we solve this problem? And some people are trying to chisel down the overpass. Some people are trying to lop off the top of the truck. We've got another truck driver seeing if they can make it go as fast as possible, and none of these things work, right? None of these solutions. And you've got a kid that walks by and just like, can you just deflate the tires? And of course that works. That's the answer. Because sometimes the really simple answers are the right answer, and that's why we want to have spaces where it's not just experts that are talking. There's this saying that in the beginner's minds there are many possibilities, and in the experts' minds there are few. We want to hear all of the ideas. We want to take them into consideration on projects. I'm going to tell you about 2 projects we've worked on recently, where we really brought in kind of everybody in on the project and started really listening to each other and working together. One is for Sake One. They're a local Portland sake brewer. They do about half brewing, half importing. And our project, it really did run like the Team B approach. So some of the team was from the projects team, some of it was us. We brought donuts, they brought sake. That was pretty nice. And we were all had this energy, and we were all talking a lot and coming up with ideas and listening to each other. They had kind of a small budget though, and they had this one need, which was to tell the story about the brewers that they imported, and also what was kind of so special about their local brewing. And in one meeting, we got really excited talking about what makes sake so interesting, the local rice, the local water. We started talking about how, Oregon and Japan have their own landscapes that are really iconic. And we started talking about making these kind of modular pages where they could tell the stories of these brewers, where they could overlap landscape and the bottles and labels and start to tell the story and click and buy the sake. And these were actually fairly straightforward to make. And they've been running with them. They've been so excited about this capability. They've made dozens of these pages, and it's this new infusion into their brand. They're reaching out to brewers in Japan and asking for their stories. It's helping them with their relationships. They just brought someone out whose family has been brewing sake for 7 generations. Got to meet that person. And now they're telling their stories. We can't remember who came up with those ideas in the meeting, but what I can tell you is it doesn't matter, because we'll ultimately be judged on how successful a project was, not whether we were the ones who came up with the good ideas. What I can tell you is that client, everyone on that team, they feel like they're a part of the project. They came to the celebration when the launch of the site happened. And they're excited to do more work together. They consider us part of their team now, too. We work with a company called MARZOCCO as well. Now, they're based in Italy, but their US headquarters, they're right here in Seattle. And MARZOCCO makes the most beautiful espresso machines. They're to espresso machines what like a Lamborghini would be to a car. I don't think they're quite as expensive as a Lamborghini, though. But this machine came out, and it just wasn't gaining the traction in the market that they wanted, which was kind of a surprise because it's such a wonderful machine. Well, Scott on the client team, he just started talking to people, talking to customers, and just kind of asking them about it. And what he started to get a sense was that it was enough of an investment that they wanted to start feeling some ownership before purchasing. Kind of like when you go to a car website and you start tinkering and putting together your car and imagining yourself driving it. That's what they wanted to be able to do. And so we built this configurator. You can go on the site, you can make your machine, and then you can share it with your friends and family via social media, or you can buy it. Either one. Now, this machine had been out on the market for, I think, 7 years when we redesigned the site. But the redesign made it feel like something new. Scott said the whole experience, it felt so fresh and so new. They thought it was a new machine. The press started talking about it like it was a new machine. And right now, 90% of the GS3 machines that are sold through this one page, through the configurator. And this is why we make custom websites. This is why we do what we do, because we want to help our clients get their goods out to the market, right? So custom web design, it's helpful for our clients. It also takes a lot more out of us, out of our teams. You know, someone in our studio is fond of saying there's 2 things that we know to be true. There's one, that we're all made of stars. And every time I hear that, I think that's just a beautiful thing. It's also true. 2 is that we're all designers. I kind of feel the same way about that one. And when we're working on custom websites, we're all putting ourselves out there. We're making something that will help our clients and that hopefully we can be truly proud of and maybe enjoy the process along the way. And so I'm hoping that you can take some of these tips that we've found over the last few years and bring them back to your own projects and make all your own projects better because you're there. Thank you.